get started with today's episode, I would like to quickly read you our podcast disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only, and it is not to substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. You should always speak with your physician or other healthcare professionals before doing any fasting, changing your diet in any way, taking or adjusting any medications or supplements, or adopting any treatment plan for a health problem. The use of any other products or services purchased by you as a result of this podcast does not create a healthcare provider-patient relationship between you and any of the experts affiliated with this podcast. Any information and statements regarding dietary supplements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. All right, and now we'll get started with today's episode.
Welcome back to another episode of the Fasting Method Podcast. This is Dr. Terry Lance, and this is a bite-sized episode that actually comes from a previous episode. We hope you enjoy being reminded of this, or if it's the first time you've heard this, you may want to go back and listen to the original episode, and that link will be shared in the show notes. Hope you enjoy.
All right, the next one. I know you're feeling a little under the weather today. And I'm certain people are going to ask you in your health consultations today, in your community groups, are you fasting? And this is a very common question at this time of the year, fasting and immunity. Should you fast if you're feeling sick this holiday season?
The funny thing is I am fasting, Megan. And we usually tell people that, if you're on vacation, don't fast. If it's a holiday, don't fast. And if you're feeling sick, don't fast. But really, I think it depends, right? I'm fasting because today is my fasting day. And actually, when you fast, it lowers your inflammation, right? Your inflammatory markers go down. And so I've got a bit of a cold, probably some allergies or whatever it is. Who knows? But inflammation is up when you've got a flu or a cold or whatever. And so fasting, and I know this from experience, actually lowers inflammation and it actually helps you heal a little bit quicker. But I would not think that somebody new to fasting or trying to enforce fasting when you're not feeling well, or if you're fasting and for whatever reason, it doesn't matter what it is, you don't feel well, then you break your fast. That's not the case with me. I feel just fine. I just have a little bit of a cold. And if I found it more challenging, and sometimes that happens even to me, if I'm under the weather, the fast feels a lot harder because these counter-regulatory hormones go up, right? When you're a little bit more stressed physically or emotionally, and then fasting just seems very difficult. You become very, very agitated. And so if I became dehydrated, I've got tons of water and teas and my salt next to me. If I became dehydrated, I wouldn't feel great, and then I would have to break the fast, but that hasn't happened. And so it's Thursday, and I fast on Thursdays.
It's funny hearing this question. I had to go to Montreal, and then I traveled to Toronto, and I got food poisoning in Toronto. And I couldn't physically eat if I wanted to for about 4 or 5 days. But it was important, at the time, because I was losing so much fluid, it was important to stay hydrated. So I definitely sourced out some broth and really got in some salt and felt well. But it's the same thing. Usually so many people just don't feel like eating when they're sick. And we should never really force eating. Every now and then, someone that I work with, one of our community members, or even myself, when feeling a little under the weather, gets a really bizarre craving. A few years ago, I had a cold. I traveled so much. I had been on 8 airplanes in the course of 1 week. My time zone, my body clock, everything, my immunity was down. So I got sick and I had this bizarre craving for asparagus, which I loathe. Like I loathe that under the most normal circumstances. It is not my vegetable of choice in any situation. And I had this just really crazy, bizarre craving for asparagus. And, when you sort of look at the nutrient profile of asparagus, it is higher in some things that I don't necessarily get a lot of in my diet. And I was like, this is really interesting. My body is clearly trying to source specific nutrients. And so every now and then we'll be checking with a coaching client, a community member, and they're, feeling a little under the weather, but they're having something like a bizarre craving for cabbage or something like truly not quote unquote comfort food. And in those cases, I think it's kind of important to listen to your body to get those nutrients that we need. So you gotta go with the ebbs and flows with this. But in general, I had a family member in the hospital with some serious inflammation recently, and they fasted him. They fasted him for 4 days before they gave him like liquids. Like he was allowed some water, but otherwise it was sort of a straight fast. And he was on a saline drip too. So it wasn't a dry fast, but that was the treatment at the hospital to lower the insulin levels down. Or anyone who's had a bout of diverticulitis, like they fast you, like that is treatment. You go to the hospital, they fast you for several days. So it's very common practice, even in standard medicine. They just don't call it fasting. And this family member, he's actually involved in the fasting community in general. And he said to the doctor something about he was doing a fast. And like, no, you're not doing a fast. We're bringing down your inflammation. He was just like, okay, sure. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. You just mentioned diverticulitis, right? It's a chronic inflammatory concern, and it can have an acute bout of it. And that's exactly it. That's exactly what people do. And so people that have diverticulitis know that if you fast, it brings down the inflammation. Again, we're not saying, continue fasting if you don't feel well. That's a totally different thing. Like I'm fully functional. I feel just great. I'm well hydrated. And I feel it as soon as I'm dehydrated, I feel it. It's immediate. I either get nauseous or, other symptoms of it. And I would break, and I would have no issues breaking my fast today if I needed. So today people were asking me, well, but how are you doing? But you have don't you need cough drops, and don't you need honey in your tea and all of these other things? And that's a whole other conversation, because, as we're doing that, you're just raising your insulin throughout the day, because these things have either sugars or sweeteners, in honey. I wouldn't be completely against putting a little bit of honey here and there within a meal in a TRE window, but I don't want to be sipping on honey all day long. Really, this is just my own experience, because that's just going to raise my insulin. And what that does, of course, if you're diabetic, you would see that right away. And what that does is it just increases your inflammation, as we said, and it's going to make your healing take a little bit longer. So I'll tell you what I do. It's quite simple, actually. I gargle with warm water and salt. That really helps. And I've got a saline nose spray, or yesterday in my group, we talked about the neti pots. I mean, there's really great ways to just cleanse this out. I drink a ton of water and tea, like I said, just to keep my throat from getting dry and from coughing up a storm. But I'm actually doing fine. And it's probably because of the fast. It's actually made it a little bit easier. But again, anytime you don't feel well and you need to break your fast, break your fast.
Yeah. One thing that I will do if I feel like I'm getting sick is I'll get some zinc lozenges from Life Extensions. Now, again, everyone listening, this is not an ad, but most zinc lozenges have tons and tons of sugar in them. Recently, my husband went to grab a bottle at Sprouts here in California, and I forget what brand it was, but there's like 8 different types of sugar. It was ridiculous, and we had to get rid of them. But Life Extensions, they have different ones. I kind of have ones for the people that like sugar, but then they have ones for people in like the paleo, low carb, real food community that aren't just full. They do not taste pleasant to have, but the zinc's been helpful. So that's something that I've started doing in the last year, as soon as I start to feel like, oh, my throat's a little bit itchy, or I'm feeling a little run down. It's something we'll keep on hand during this holiday season too, just because everybody's just being so extra cautious right now around flu season.
Yeah.
We certainly enjoyed bringing you this episode and look forward to bringing you another one next week. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this episode or any others, please take this opportunity to share them with your friends or loved ones. Take good care, everyone.